Welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Podcast, hosted by CRM technology and sales process expert Christopher Smith, talking with sales leaders that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. Listen to find out how the best of the best achieve success with their team and CRM technology. And remember, unless you are the lead dog, the view never changes.
Welcome to Sales Lead Dog. Joining me today for this episode, I have Bill Berger, Executive Director of Fairbanks Morse Defense. Bill, welcome to Sales Lead Dog.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you today. Bill, tell me a bit about Fairbanks Morse Defense.
Well, Fairbanks Morse Defense has been around for over 150 years now. A little bit of everything out in the Midwest, back when they were making windmills and everything. But over the years, it evolved into making medium speed diesel engines for the Navy. And about 5 years ago, they were bought by a private equity firm and spun off of the private company. And they became the flagship company. I happened to be working at a company called Ward Leonard at the time. And we were the first big acquisition. So over the past 5 years, we've made 11 acquisitions. So have rapidly changed and brought in. But fundamentally, all of those companies are involved in making what's considered hull mechanical and electrical equipment for the Navy and the Coast Guard. So we make engines and motors and controls and valves. So all different types of product for the Navy. And I think the unique part about what we have is that we're focused on not only just making the components, but then servicing them throughout the lifespan. Some of these ships last for 50 years.
Yeah.
So while a lot of companies are hesitant to work with the Department of Defense these days, given all the regulations and everything, we're one of the few companies that is running towards the Navy and running towards the Coast Guard and saying, how can we help you? And working with them to make sure that all of our service members have the best products and that we are maintaining that and keep the readiness of the country at its highest level.
I love that mission. That is awesome.
It makes it easy to go to work every day.
Oh, I bet. Bill, when you look back over your career, you've been doing this for a while. If you could boil it down into three things that have really led and driven the success that you've achieved, what would those three things be?
Well, I'd say it starts off. It starts off with I started out after college in the Marine Corps so not only the challenge of becoming an officer of Marines, but when you're in the Marines, you have a mission, and you might have a table that tells you how many people and how much equipment you have. You rarely have all of that, but that's no excuse not to complete the mission. You have to have the creativity, the drive to get that done. And I just continue to bring that forward with me, throughout my career. See too many people, especially in the commercial space, that, well, we would have gotten that done, but I didn't have all the team members, or, this went wrong. That's meaningful, but it doesn't stop. I mean, you have a job to do, so get it done. I think the second one is early on in my sales training and the primary courses, they sent me through to learn sales, whether, spin or whatever technique you might have. And then over the years, all the other things that you might have out there, programs, realizing that it's all about people. So whether it's your team or whether it's your customer, you've got to be able to reach the person. Nobody is going to buy from people they don't like. Maybe product can get you in there sometimes, but if you really want to be the person who can make the consistent sales, you've got to find what it is your customer needs. And if you're managing people, what are their needs? So just always keeping in mind, put on that other person's hat before you go talk to them and understand what it is that is going to drive them or make them, want to do stuff. And, I think that'll become a recurrent theme in our conversation, is just looking at that. And then the last thing is, I look back at my first sales job, and my wife and I had moved from Virginia up to New York City. My father happened to be, in the same organization, so they wanted me away from him. And I remember my first vice president, he just said, Bill, you are my perfect candidate for somebody who's going from the service side over to sales. You just married, you just bought a house, your wife's 9 months pregnant, you have no choice because I'm giving you no named accounts. You have to succeed.
Yeah.
And I look back at that and I just recognize that, yeah, if you have that hunger, if you know, am I challenging myself every day to have that same hunger I had on day one of going to hit the streets of Manhattan, trying to figure out how to sell communications equipment back then?
Oh man, that I love that. That is so true. You know, you just bought a house, your wife's 9 months pregnant. You got to have a fire in your belly.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's wild. Um, so you're in the Marines. Even before you went into the Marines, did you have a vision for what you wanted to be post-military career?
Well, I figured that I wanted to be something involving technology, and my father was in sales early days of technology. Talk about back with computers, when they were going from mainframes down to the mini computers and all of that type of stuff. I was the writing my science fair experiments about how telecommunications works. I remember going to a trade show with him back in my teens, where I was like, how do you know all these people? It's the same 100 people. We just change booths every couple of years.
Yeah,
So I was intrigued by sales. I was intrigued by the personal interaction you got with people, but I've always enjoyed all of the technology side of things. I wanted to sell products that mean something, that matter to people, that I feel that I can make a difference by selling that product. But so, I mean, from an early age, I wanted to be in sales. And when I came out of the Marines, I understood that I needed to learn the commercial world as well as selling. So that's why for a number of years, I was in a program management role for a while. I then ran an install group and was doing some international program management before I then understood the technology, understood the market, and then felt comfortable to then move into that sales role and started pursuing getting into selling.
yeah. What was that first job like? Was that something you took to easily, or did you really have to fall on your face a lot to learn?
I had to follow my face a bit to learn. Selling communications equipment, there are a couple of things, and there's a lot of opportunities, and you can go out and look at stuff. And so, I was going, through the fashion district, and I was trying to go to Wall Street, and I was trying to go to all these places. And luckily, I was working with a company that had a name, so that helped. I had a lot of other people in the office that helped guide me and showed me, where to go. But then quickly, then being able to pick up that, wow, these financial houses, the all of the big trading companies, they're the ones with the money. I can go chase all these other people, but these people have a need, and my product can make a difference with them. So worked with that before I then moved over to selling to the telephone companies themselves
Yeah.
and chasing those companies for a while.
Hey, we're taking a quick break to thank you for listening to and supporting the Sales Lead Dog podcast. I want to take a moment and tell you about my book, CRM Shouldn't Suck. If your CRM feels more like a black hole for data than something that actually helps your team sell, you're not alone. The book breaks down why CRMs fail for so many businesses and what you can do about it. No fluff, just real strategies that work. So go to crmshouldn'tsuck.com to order your free copy right now. That's right, we're giving it away. And while you're there, take 2 minutes to check out the CRM Impact Score. It's a quick diagnostic that shows you how your CRM is really performing, where it's helping you and where it's hurting you. You'll get a personalized report with clear, actionable next steps you can start right away to maximize your CRM investment. We've also got blogs, videos, and a bunch of other resources to help you finally get the results you were promised when you bought your CRM. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes of Sales Lead Dog. Okay, let's get back to this episode of the Sales Lead Dog podcast.
Are there any 2 or 3 lessons learned that, from those early days in selling that you still leverage today?
Um, I think that it goes back to, having that hunger and still learning and understanding your customers. And I think it was actually before I left the telecom stuff, I was working, I was going to be one of the great millionaires coming off the telecom bubble. So left an established company to go work for a couple startups, that we were going to make I was going to make my $1 million+ and live happily ever after. Um, but didn't necessarily learn to read my customers well. So I had some great technology and getting out there and made some sales to some of the big phone companies that were out there at the time. There was a lot of mergers going on, and we had moved to San Antonio, where they had just set up one of the new companies, which is pretty much the majority of what's now today AT&T.
Yeah.
But I was successful selling, but then quickly realized that I was successful selling not because they needed my product. They liked my product, but they had known good vendors that they wanted to work with. And so I was only a lever for them. So my success was short term. So learning that, what is the long story? What's the long game in this? And I've taken on the approach now that I think you can be trained. I can probably put anybody out on the street and go get their first sale, but it's about they have to make that second, third, fourth sale. So that's a lot of what I take forward. It's just understanding, what is this going to be like for the long term? What's the long ride that I'm looking for here?
Yeah. So you mentioned when I asked you about the three things that have really driven your success, the one that really seemed to resonate, I think, the most with you was people.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your philosophy for building a team. Because again, I think, you can look at any NFL coach. If he doesn't have great players, doesn't matter how good of a coach he is, he can only take them so far. You really have to, you're as good as the people you have. What's your philosophy for building your teams?
I've really had to develop that philosophy because I've been in where I'm a direct manager as well as a number, even the role right now, I'm in far more of a matrixed organization that I don't have in the selling side. I have some people who work for me, but they're on the corporate side. I have to bridge across many boundaries and many different business units and profit loss centers to work with each of these sales teams to help make them be successful. But my philosophy, through all of that is get to know them and learn how, like I said, it's the personal side. Learn how to, communicate with them. I had a boss that really pushed me. I thought I was interviewing candidates great when I was in my first sales management job and bringing these people in. And yeah, I could see this person might have a slight concern for this reason or that reason. And but I'm a great manager. I can outmanage their weaknesses or the way that they're approaching. And luckily, this boss then said, no, we're going to start doing personality tests of these people. We're going to understand who they are. How are you going to communicate with them? Are you going to speak their language? Because they don't all think the same way that Bill Berger does.
Right.
So make sure that they have the motivations. So I've had salespeople that work for me that are very, money driven. I've had some that are not. They all have different drivers. They have different approaches. So I try to build the team that complements one another. But I also, try to look at, well, what is our mission? What does our customer expect? I hired some people when I actually then left telephony and started selling to the Department of Defense. I had to learn there that there's a speed to this. This is not fast. It is not unusual that I can have a sales process that takes 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
There are many salespeople that can't work in that type of environment. They need to have that immediate response. So understanding that and understanding what they have, but at the same time, you don't want to, go hire that person that's not going to have the drive, because what you won't notice, their failures today and their failure to do due diligence today means that you don't have a sale in 5 years.
Right.
And it's too late to recover.
That hurts.
Yes.
That hurts 5 years down the road. That's kind of a big deal.
Right.
So how does that impact your hiring process?
Um, a lot of it is about hiring the right people. So it really is about learning who they are. Um, we do, if we can hire a known entity, I mean, the good part is there's a lot of cross pollination. There's a lot of things that happen. There's an organization called the Marine Machinery Association that I've been a member of, and actually I'm a past president of that organization. But that organization, has I think we're up around about 90 companies right now that sell primarily to the Navy. So you can see people that have that skill set. But again, you also want to look at, what does your team need? Sometimes bringing somebody in that is green to the Defense Department, but you can see that they have the patience. They can give you examples of what they have. In fact, we just hired somebody recently that's going to be joining our team that has not sold in the past. But he's coming out of one of the shipyards. He's been a buyer at the shipyard. But when we talked to him, we could really see, he's got the patience. He understands the methodology, and we can teach him how to sell.
Right. Right. Yeah, well, that's my thing. It's like I try to look for smart people because if they're smart, if they can learn, I can teach them. And,
Yes.
and so that's one of the things I look for is that because it's hard to teach stupid, not to be crass, but
Well, and you need to have somebody that can be a rule follower, understand, especially selling to the Department of
oh
Defense. There
yeah,
are a lot of rules that we have to live by,
yeah,
but you have to have creativity.
yeah,
My wife works in the legal field, and she always laughs about, no, the laws and the contracts are to tell you the boundaries. So you know, so you got to understand that. So and being in sales, it is know your
yeah,
boundary and know how close can you get to that edge. What can you do that's creative? How
right,
can we work with the customer to solve their problem, and not just roll over and say, well, we can't do it because the rules say you can't do it.
right, yeah. And that it's interesting for me too. It's not like you're out there chasing 10,000 customers, you
Uh,
know.
no.
It's very different type of selling when they're right there, right in front of you.
Well,
Right.
absolutely. In fact, in my current job, while I'm in the corporate side, so
Yeah.
when I was at Ward Leonard, I was the vice president of sales and marketing there. Um, I had, it was a finite number, but we had every ship, all the shipyards that are selling into the Navy. Then
Yeah.
there's a lot of other people because we were selling motors. So somebody
Yeah.
who's making a pump or a compressor or something, we could sell to them, but it still is a finite number.
Yeah.
Once I got pulled up to the corporate level because we were making so many acquisitions, um, I was then put in charge of our largest customer, which is, right, that, which is happens to be Newport News Shipbuilding. And then I now have all the Huntington Ingalls companies. So I've got Newport News Shipbuilding and Ingalls. So I've got two customers.
Yeah.
Now, they are huge.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we're selling hundreds of millions of dollars to
Yeah.
these companies,
Yeah.
but and I've got currently what's now 10 business units, which actually we're embarking on a new exciting adventure. Is that we've announced, that we're acquiring Rolls-Royce's propulsion division.
Oh, wow.
So here in 2 weeks, we're going to have all the propeller business now rolling in, which is going to, it's going to be the biggest acquisition we've made.
Yeah.
So there's a big um, emphasis on getting it right
Yeah.
and building up the relationships that you can with your customer.
Right. Which comes back to people,
Yes.
So let's talk about on the customer side.
Mhm.
What does it take for your opinion to really create those long-term, especially a long, complex sales process like you have? What's it take to build those relationships to endure through those long sales processes?
Right. Well, it goes back to that hunger and perseverance that you've got to continue to be out there. And then so be at the events that they go to, be where they are, um, and then really listen to what it is that they say they need. And sometimes they may not know what they need, but watch what they're doing, learn what they're doing. If I have a day that's not very busy and I can, convince them to allow me down onto to the waterfront where they're building the ships, I'm going to get down there with the construction supervisors. I'm going to listen to what issues are they having? Or I talk to the salespeople from each of the business units that are down there, because I have all these people that are out there, working on that. And it's to build up a trust. I joke that in my current role, there's enough people at Fairbanks Morse that are calling on my two customers that I can, on any given day, there is somebody that is saying, writing, or doing something that is pissing somebody off at one of my customers. My key job is to find out about it and make sure that it doesn't blow up, and that we can go fix that problem or work with it. And I think that because I've shown people I care and I want to be there and I want to help those problems, my customers will call me. There's a couple customers that I know that if 7:30 in the morning, these people ring me, that my day has now changed.
Yes.
But I'm going to be worried. They're not calling me, early in the morning to explain to me how wonderful we're doing. Something that has gone awry. And so now it's about getting the wheels back on the track and making sure that we're moving forward, and that we're progressing through how we're supporting that customer.
Yeah. When you look back over your career, I've always considered, the things we lose, the deals we lose that we don't get, those are the best learning. Those are the ones we remember way more than the ones we've won.
Yep.
Could you tell us maybe one deal that you thought you had but you lost it and it just hurt? Can you tell us about that and what you take forward from that, or what you took forward from that experience?
Yeah, I think, I had mentioned before back in the telephony world of, while I made the little sale, I did not win the overall telephony network. I had this, whole game plan that we were either going to go public and I was going to make all my money off the stock options I had, or I just sell, once I sell into one central office, it's going to go everywhere. It'll be gangbusters.
Yeah.
And my commissions are going to, so my family is going to be set for life.
Yeah.
And then to find out that, no, I didn't win that long term. And there's been others along the way. Yeah. So I've at least taken an approach when I look at these, they do hurt. And selling, you have to put yourself in the best, I guess it's a percentage game. You've got to play the best role you can. You've got to get in there. But again, it's people. You cannot control every aspect of it. And you will have to lose. So when you lose, there's an amount of time to learn, to fight, to try to see, is it reversible? But at the same time, you have an obligation to your company to be generating sales. Yeah. You've got to be able to move on, put that behind you, and then go and attack something else. I had a boss at one time that, he was comparing me to one of my peers. He's like, Bill, you really have to learn how to sandbag better. This other guy, he's always got something, behind his, behind what he's going on. Right. And I smiled, and I had to say, Chris, do you really believe that? Because I've never been under quota, and I've lost sales. Yeah. So how does that happen? You may not have known what I had, but always had something else that I could go to, or I always turned quickly and developed something in the time that I could.
Yeah. Sandbag better. That's kind of funny coming from your boss.
Yes, it is. It's not, well, that was another learning experience, because and actually that was an interesting part in my career, because I had been gotten up to being a VP of sales, and I had gone back to carrying a bag myself. I had just said, okay, I'm ready to get back there and fight. And, basically it looked like the right move for me. And that's what then got me into this. So, being back out there, I was approaching the job and how I was dealing with him back as if I was a sales manager, not as the salesperson, so I was trying to be as open and honest with him and make sure the forecast was right on. I knew everything that he needed to do.
Yeah. uh, what role does empathy play when it comes to managing people and leading people?
You've got to, I mean, you actually have to have some empathy. You've got to, again, that's part about understanding them and understanding what's going on with them. Um, but that's also where you've got to then be able to motivate them that whatever's happening, you can get over that. You can correct that. Um, but it's also about, the empathy is a lot of times you might have to dig to actually understand what is the core issue that's happening. I know there's a lot of people here in the States probably have seen all the ads, for buildsubmarines.com. Well, that's a whole talent pipeline program that the Navy's trying to run. And a lot of the training that they're doing on hiring people there is to bother to ask, because they talk about hiring a shipyard worker. All of a sudden somebody may not show up at your company just for no reason. And do you bother to call and find out? Because those companies that did go and find out, oh, well, my mom is sick, or my car broke down, or having that's where you can then start working with them. So the empathy is to be able to not just be cold and get your job done, but understand that life happens to everybody and they've got to have that balance. So you've got to be able to work with them. And then maybe maybe it's a time that you need to step in. Or perhaps that distraction is too much. And you've maybe have to make some hard decisions at that point about how you're going to work with this person. What is best for you and for them in the long run.
How do you identify people that you think have the potential to become a leader within your organization?
A lot of it is just how they interact with people. They particularly, it's back, to your sales 101, how do you deal with that receptionist when you go through the front desk? If there are many companies that have receptionists at their front
anymore.
I mean, you really can't make a relationship with that kiosk on the wall. But
it's a little hard.
But everybody you meet, understanding that they're there doing a job and they're a person and they want to be seen, and so do the people that we're working with, how does somebody approach this? Do they create the team? Do they accept their failures and then try to figure out how they're going to avoid repeating that failure, that type of thing. So try to really look at, what is that skill set that they're going to be able to take on to then help others. I mean, it probably comes across as way too high on my ego. I'm pretty confident that I can go out and sell, but realistically, I so much love coaching in the sales world and working with others, because I look at it, give me 3 or 4 people and look at how many more places I can be, because I then arm them to go out and then I back them. And I've played every role. I tell anybody I'm working for, you tell me when we go into this meeting, what role you want me to be. I've gone in and been a sales engineer. I've been a senior executive, whatever I have to be to help them move their opportunity forward. How do you? So I'm looking for that in others. I'm looking for who's going to go and support their team so that they're taking their good skills and expanding that out beyond themselves.
For the first, when you look back, the first person that hired you into a leadership role, did they ever tell you why they picked you?
Actually, in the end, they did. And it was a really intriguing. So I was, took the train up to New York, and I sat down, and we had a lot of interview, and I had to do the, sell me this pencil and all these crazy things that you have to do as a salesperson. And Mario talked about all the people that thought that they could come from technical. They saw all the salespeople and, gee, look at all those people. They got such an easy job. They make all the money. Isn't this wonderful? And nobody knew how many times, they didn't see how many times the door got shut in their face.
Right.
and what they want. And so at the end of that interview, Mario told me, I can't believe how disappointed I am in you. You know, you came up here, I thought you had all the gumption in the world. This is just not going to work. And so I hopped on the train and I was sulking, you know. So
Yeah.
here I'm going from New York down to DC, and about halfway through the ride, I said, he just rejected me. This is a test.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
called him right back as soon as I got home, and that's what he said. He said, okay, then you recognized it, you bounce back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's funny. I was wondering, he's saying, like, is he just messing with him to see? That's what he was doing.
yep.
That's pretty bold technique when you're, I mean, because it's like, it's such a huge part of selling
Yes.
is dealing with rejection and how do I move past that? Because it's oftentimes it's not the final answer, you know?
Right.
You know, you just have to approach it a different way. I was just having we recorded a video yesterday with a partner company of ours, and we are talking about that, you know, the different things that can come up when you're selling. And oftentimes we look at them as roadblocks. And I'm like, you know, it's just a matter of perspective. You know, it may look like a wall, but if I step back a bit, maybe shift over here to the right, oh, you know what? It's open over on this side. Let's try coming in from this angle
Right.
and see what we can do.
Yep.
You know, and so you just have to be willing to shift, change direction, and let's see if we can tackle it this way.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Absolutely.
What advice do you have for young leaders that are just starting their journey as a sales leader?
Try to look for where you can find mentorship. You know, there's a lot you can get from books. You know, I think I mentioned, you know, I've been through a slew of different training programs. You know, I know when I first got in there, you know, got into selling, they sent me off to a sales training class, and I've had, you know, multiple times, but bother to understand the formulas and the techniques, you know, about developing value. So I mean, there's a lot of different methodologies, but there's a lot of similarities between all of them. You know, if you look at the sales, you know, you're supposed to find the, you know, the fox or the person that is, you know, behind the scenes and all of that, understand the leadership, but get out there and understand your market and understand your what the selling techniques are, and how you can communicate. And if you can get yourself into some programs, particularly those that then are doing videos of yourself, there is nothing more realistic than having to then watch yourself in a video session. And so that establishes that groundwork, and that really that good basics of what you have.
Yeah, that's awesome. CRM, do you love it or do you hate it?
I love CRM. I hate the implementation of CRM.
Oh man, amen, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, there are times in my career that CRM was nothing more than a contact database type of thing, and that's all I used it for. I've learned a lot more over time of the value of it.
Yeah.
We are going through some integration in my company right now. All these acquisitions are bringing all these different entities in.
Yeah.
You know, we actually, you know, it started off with merging two databases that we had for CRM systems.
Yeah.
So how we could bring those, you know, together. It's involved, you know, it's now tried to work with some consultants to help us be better. And the fact that we also have different selling techniques. I have got some products that, you know, that are the products that the Department of Navy decides what's going to go into this ship because it's for propulsion or the engine or driving energy. And then I've got other commodity type stuff. So it's a wide range of products. So how do you get one system to work for everybody? But at the same time, because we have all of this and because we're trying to sell in a unified manner and we have multiple people calling on similar people, without a CRM system, you can't keep that all aligned. And you can't go across the long span that we have of our selling if you don't have that history.
Yeah.
And then it even carries forward for us. Like we said, we try to service the product as well. Well, that helps me get the product sold. Now that it's sold, we have that whole inventory of what have we sold. We can now be working with our customers to determine when we are likely going to have to come in and service them, and when we're going to have to get involved in that.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm thrilled with what we're doing with CRM and what we're trying to do. I'm really excited about all the, seeing you had some podcast about AI and the CRM, and we're investigating, how we could do that and what we could do. I'm trying to understand, from all the AI stuff and from the CRM, how do we keep that organization? But then we never forget, again, it's about the people.
Yeah.
So you can have that tasking and you can have that thing that's helping you keep things organized.
Yeah.
But are you using the CRM system, and are you, for efficiency? Are you using the AI tools that you have, again, for efficiency? And that then should be buying you the time to then be able to then taking the time to understand, how am I impacting my customer? What am I doing?
Yeah. It's all, let's say when I talk to people with CRM, it's like, guys, it's just a tool. It's all it is. It's a tool. Right. We just have to make sure we're building the right tool for the job. And we're not trying to use, a sledgehammer to drive in a little roofing nail, or, we have this big old stake and I'm trying to use a mallet to pound that in. It's just not going to work. Right. You've got to make sure you've got the right tool for the job.
No, absolutely. And then I also think that, I think in your book has the 20 big problems that people have had. And it was entertaining going through. And I think in my career, I've experienced at least 13 of them. So at different times. So you have that. And then, there is that uphill battle, because so many people have had bad CRM experiences.
Oh, yeah.
It's now winning them over. So I currently have some executives in my company that say, I understand the story. I understand what you're saying, but where is the return on investment? Because I've seen it fail before. So trying to then convince them that we have the right thing. And I think, some of your advice about it, just like your customers, you have internal customers too.
Yeah.
You've got to go and understand what their needs are. So if you're convincing them that that this is the tool you need, then you've got to find what their need is and how are you going to win them over.
That's right. That's right. Bill, it's been great chatting with you. We're at our time here for this episode of Sales Lead Dog. I really appreciate you coming on. If people listening to this episode want to reach out and connect with you, if they want to learn more about Fairbanks Morse Defense, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, we are relatively prolific on LinkedIn, so I know that I'm up there. So, look me up there. Or if you want to reach out to me directly, it is just bill.berger. So it's Berger at fmdefense.com. I'm just like I said, go seek out other people. I'm more than willing to help talk to people and work, if I can help them in any way.
That's awesome. If you didn't catch that, no worries. You can catch that in our show notes at impellercrm.com/sales lead dog, where you'll get not only this episode of Sales Lead Dog, but all our 150 plus episodes. Be sure to check that out. Be sure to reach out and connect with Bill. Bill, thank you again for coming on Sales Lead Dog. It's been terrific, and welcome to the Sales Lead Dog Pack.
Thank you, Chris.
As we end this discussion on Sales Lead Dog, be sure to subscribe to catch all our episodes. On social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Watch the videos on YouTube, and you can also find our episodes on our website at impellercrm.com/Sales Lead Dog. Sales Lead Dog is supported by Impeller CRM, delivering objectively better CRM for business, guaranteed.